Hey guys, and welcome back to the 1v1 podcast. I am your host, Vlhadus, and today I have another very special guest from the Guild Axiom, of course, one of my cohorts in crime. His name is Kudaja. What's going on, man?
Good day. It's a good day. Glad to be here, man. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
no, thank you for coming on, man. Like I said, it's so funny because it's like with these fireside chats that Fane always has every month in our guild. I love hearing everyone's perspective when it comes to like Ashes and like what they're expecting from the game. But also, when I first came into Axiom, it was one of those things where I wanted to really get to know people's like MMO history. And by talking Ashes all the time, like I get to hear people's perspective on like what they think is good MMO gameplay, what they think is bad MMO gameplay. So, you know, hearing a lot, because we've had like talks, of course, about like MMOs, Ashes, and all that stuff. But I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity, at least for me, to hear more about like your gaming history, like your MMO history, and just talking more about the state of the genre, and just to see like what you're excited about when it comes to Ashes specifically. So, if you want to start out by just kind of give me a rundown, I guess, of like, what MMOs have you played, you know, that whole history.
If they were out there, I probably played them. Um,
Okay.
no, MMO wise, I mean, I think a lot of us, I would say my first three big ones obviously would be like World of Warcraft,
Hmm.
the first Guild Wars, and
Oh,
Lineage.
wow.
Oh
So
yeah, Guild Wars 1 was definitely by far, I still think probably had the most custom class building systems when it comes to subclasses out there.
was it still tied to weapon, like abilities tied to weapons in Guild Wars 1, or was that a new thing for Guild
No,
Wars 2?
no. So Guild Wars 1, you picked your original class. Say you wanted to be a wizard, right?
Hmm.
Or a mage, whatever the I can't remember the name of conventions then. But then say you want your subclass as a necromancer. So one of the actual other classes, instead of it being your main, was your subclass, and you could mix them together like that in some forms. I don't believe all of them at the time you can mix them, but there were different variations, and it was usually a quest to go and unlock, or you had to travel to go find that person and unlock that subclass. So
Interesting.
it's very different from how they did in Guild Wars 2.
I wonder why they didn't proceed with that forward. Like, I wonder why they decided to do the whole locking of abilities to weapons. Me personally, I'm just not a fan of that kind of gameplay. And talking to Kat last week, uh, like I was just kind of letting her know I was just really kind of like relieved when Steven was also not a fan of that system because
Yeah,
I just think the ability should come from the class, not from a weapon. But
I
so
agree.
going a little bit into Lineage, WoW, Guild Wars 1. I mean, you pretty much have played a lot of like the traditional MMOs. Like we talked about SWTOR,
Yeah,
Black Desert Online, ESO, Lost Ark. You were huge into Lost Ark for a bit, playing the Shadow Hunter, which was like what I was playing originally. So,
yeah.
um, like, what do you feel? Because I there just seems to be this kind of ambience, not just in the Axiom air, right, in our Discord, but just in general, like talking to friends of mine outside, um, the whole state of the MMO genre, but I think at large, like the gaming genre just feels like at a lull period right now. Like, don't you agree?
I do. And I think, and we'll see this not just in the MMO period necessarily, but across all games. A lot of games tend to see one game do successful and they kind of stick to it. And they're like, okay, well, it doesn't look like we really have to change much. They were successful, so why can't we be? So no one's really tried changing the wheel. They've all just kept going with the same thing over and over. And after a while, I mean, you can only tell a story the same way so many times. You can put a different shade of color on it, but it's still the same story. And I think now we're getting to that point, especially if you see like the WoW community been going on almost like what 20 years, so close to it.
Very
Um,
close to it.
it's expansion after expansion. There was nothing that really was like, wow, this is awesome. I want to keep going. If anything, it just continued to get lower and lower on the our standard scale, and we were just kind of accepting of it. And I think it's not necessarily the devs that are at fault, but also the player base too, because we're the ones that were willing to just accept the halfway done MMO stuff in the past.
Well, that's a very good point because I feel like the MMO community specifically as a whole has gotten very okay with shit mechanics and basically being treated like crap.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when we're treated okay, like it's still not good behavior, but when we're treated okay, it's like this, oh my god, they did the best. They're It's like Blizzard's the best thing ever, or this company is the best thing ever for doing this thing. They're listening to the players, and they're just all excited. It's like we should have been from the jump been treated this way, and it should have gotten way better. But because of we can talk about corporate greed. I know myself, you, Lucail, and a couple of others in Axiom have talked about the whole corporateness and microtransactions and making more money. I just feel because that exists and because they are trying to increase year on year or quarter after quarter, that is completely disincentivizing us as players. And I feel like the big AAA studios are making us conform to less content and us being okay with it. And I just think it's bullshit.
Absolutely. I mean, it's true, and it's every company though. Once company
Right.
gets up there to that kind of money, I mean, look at go pick up a cereal box and tell me it's the same size with the same amount of cereal in it 10, 15 years ago. It's not. It's the same price, but it is not the same amount.
No, it's more
And I mean,
expensive for less.
yeah. And so like you'll see that across all products, and that's what's upsetting though. And unfortunately, until we have a studio like Intrepid, somebody that has the financial means of, say, Steven, who's also a person who's enjoyed and loved video games for so long and wants to get back on the right track in the gaming industry. And that's why I truly have faith with Intrepid. Granted, I know everyone has their reservations, and rightly so at times, depending with microtransactions, cosmetics, so forth. But when you take a look at it and you see somebody that really just enjoys what they're doing and has an idea, and they want everybody to love that idea and enjoy that idea and get back to our core gaming roots of actually having fun and wanting to explore into a new game, not
True.
going, this is a new expansion, I'm just going to fly through it, max out my level and be done with it. It's I feel like there's some success there already, and that's kind of where I'm hoping we'll be.
I I don't know if it's just my mentality of the beaten dog syndrome. I think it's great that Steven is doing what he's doing. Like, totally agree. But Final Fantasy's been doing what they've been doing. And I know you're a huge advocate of Final Fantasy 14.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, but that hasn't changed. Like Yoshi P and his team hasn't really changed the landscape. Like they're just an outlier amongst corporate greed.
That it actually on launch, it did terrible.
No, no,
Its
I
launch
yes, it
was
did.
terrible. It
Yeah,
took them 2 years later to get the game back into a good state of where their player base, and then up until the last, not this current expansion, but the one before,
Shadowbringers.
yeah, Shadowbringers, Shadowbringers really brought a lot of people back. And I
Hmm.
think with them, though, one thing about that is that, look, anyone can fight me on it, that's fine, but World of Warcraft's story is terrible. Half the time it doesn't make sense, and
Really?
they don't, and half the time they don't
No.
follow the same plot. Jesus,
Are you telling
but
me they
I will
forget story plots? Kudaja.
badly, but
Kudaja.
that's where Final Fantasy 14 excels at, man. They have a
I
story, they've
agree.
stuck to it, and they've been able to continue that story and make so many um this characters that you didn't know before really show and light. And I think that's why they work so well, is that they, in the terms of Final Fantasy, it is a story based game. So as long as they stick to their story, you're gonna have your players that really enjoy the content, enjoy the story, play through it. I think their mechanics are not overly done. Some people would claim that Final Fantasy's mechanics are too easy versus, like, say, your Mythic raids or anything like that. Um, and that's probably fair on some points. You still have people that are gonna, min max stuff, but I think Final Fantasy is just one of those games that they did well and they stuck to it. And as long as they keep sticking to it, it will continue to do well. World of Warcraft just didn't stick to it, to any one thing. They keep throwing out expansions with again, it's the same thing, but just a different shade of color and hoping people will buy it, and people will, and they'll call it a success. And then those same people are gonna be upset and sad a few months later.
Right. I mean, and it's this expansion, Shadowlands, was the very first time they brought back an old feature of an old expansion and did something with it. Now, here's
Yeah.
the thing: the Mage Tower was a great addition to Legion. Now, I was kind of expecting there to be something new with the Mage Tower because they're bringing it back, but it wasn't. It was literally the same bosses, same encounters, same everything. Just or at the same difficulty, of course, for Shadowlands. Um, and you got a new transmog out of it, but it wasn't new. And it's like if you're not going to do anything new with it, then just make it a mainstay feature for forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is that what I've always been so upset about for World of Warcraft specifically is they literally just waste. Dude, rip to all the developers who worked on like the Mista Pandaria farm, rip to all the hours wasted making the garrisons, rip for, like name any freaking system that they didn't carry over, like the artifact weapon, gone,
Yep.
the class order halls, which I thought was a great, cool, like, and that could be something that can be integrated into every expansion, gone. Like, it's like you literally waste all of these development hours making these systems
Uh,
just to throw
that's
them
why I'm
away.
so that's why I'm so anti-fly mounts. I'm
Hmm,
complete anti-fly mounts.
I did not
And the
know that.
reason being is because think about it, if you're a developer that spent thousands of hours on something and then all the people just want their fly mounts immediately and they just fly over all that content, all those minute little details that you put in there, everything that they worked so hard on, and people are just going to go, hop on their fly mount and go right over it and never look at it. You don't really get to experience it so much. Now, I don't, in Ashes, they're very limited, and that's what I like. I don't mind if it's a thing at times or if there's some type of flight travel, but I just think that it should be limited to the aspect that when you're forced to actually go through the environment, you can appreciate it and take more of it in. And I feel like it's not wasting content.
Well, and that's also just going to incentivize developers, especially the animation department or the environmental department, just to make bland landscapes because no one's going to see them anyway.
Yeah,
So why am I going to put these finer details in the landscapes when people are just going to fly over it and probably not even pay attention? So
exactly.
it's like, and I do agree that the MMO genre right now has definitely been hurting for some new blood to really kind of have something on par with Final Fantasy, because when it comes to Final Fantasy, their story is second to none. There's really, I don't think another game or another MMO does story as well as Final Fantasy. The only game that I can probably say comes very close, and it's not because I'm a Star Wars guy, because I'm really not, but Star Wars: The Old Republic, dude, I'm sorry, like that is probably the best story I've ever seen from Star Wars, and I'm even counting like episode 4, 5, and 6, the originals. Like seriously, because I
uh,
mean, it's just so good, and
I,
you're
I
and
will
you're at the
tell you,
forefront.
yeah, I will tell you as a Star Wars person, just live and breathe for Star Wars. I will be so glad when the Skywalker series is gone and we're done with it.
Oh
Take me
yeah,
back to KOTOR's, man.
dude,
Yeah, let's go back a
seriously,
thousand years. And
completely agree.
somebody bring out Darth Bane. If you've never
Yes.
seen Darth Bane, he or read the books, you should read them. They're fantastic. But no, I completely agree. SOTOR was by far one of my favorite MMOs.
Hmm.
SOTOR and WildStar. Obviously, WildStar just for the character combat and the crafting customizations were probably some of the best crafting that I've ever played with in an MMO. Unfortunately, the game didn't do well towards the end game, and it was a little too hardcore. And I think it was a little just a two head ahead of its time. WildStar was, but SOTOR was fantastic. They just needed to work a little harder on some things. I think the game would have been a little bit bigger success in the beginning, but the replayability with so many different storylines in SOTOR is what makes it so great.
No, for sure, for sure. And I just kind of want to ask you a question when it comes to the state of MMOs.
Hmm.
Like Asmongold talks about, like the only way we can get rid of like microtransactions, everything is at the government level or at the federal level, which I really do agree. But Do you think there's anything that can really be done to just improve the MMO genre, like, as a whole?
To improve it as a whole. It's interesting. So
I feel like it's gonna be one of those things that, I know I'll give you some time to think, because that
yeah,
is kind of like the $1,000,000 question, right?
yeah, right.
Um, but I think for me, it's that's why, it takes so much time to make an MMO. We've talked about that in Axiom, right? Like people really didn't even know that, Star Wars, took I think 5 years to make, which in retrospect, now that I think about it, with all the voice acting, the cinematics, and
That's
questing,
pretty impressive
that's
considering
pretty freaking
some
fast.
games that take 6 years that
What was that?
some games that take sorry, apologies. Some
No.
games that take, 6 years, and, you're still reading all the text. Like, everything there's not a single voice, you're like, "Oh, man." Like, "What
Uh,
happened?
well,
What'd you do in those 6 years?"
and that's what we'll talk about the voice acting for Ashes, but like it's one of those things where people don't understand how long it takes to make an MMO. And then when these MMOs come out, right, they got to make money. Like Star Wars, I think was almost like 300 million or something ridiculous. Like it was a lot of money that they
It
put
was.
into that MMO.
It
Um,
actually had, at the time, the highest,
biggest, right?
biggest launch. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
biggest launch, actually. When it launched, it had one of the highest subscription growth ever. And it was a lot of money that they put into that, but it was mismanaged, unfortunately.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So it either gets, completely riddled with microtransactions, pay to win, different currencies to buy, microtransactions when it comes to pay to convenience, either severe pay to convenience, or even like, cosmetics. And I think we're at this point in time where our people value their time so much they would rather spend money to get past stuff, which, that's fine. I just don't think it's great for the genre as a whole. Like to me, the MMO genre is like it's supposed to take 100 hours for you to do like something or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Yeah.
meant to be done in 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And when it comes to leveling, when it comes to, your item level progression, when it comes to professions in general, when it comes to all these different things, like it takes time. And I feel like maybe social media, TikTok, our attention spans being far less than what it was like back in the 90s when I grew
It
up.
it's the
Um,
instant gratification that a lot of people feel they need nowadays. I
right.
mean, I've seen it even in my own son and stuff. When he plays a game, he gets very bored very quick if it takes too long. So he likes, hopping into Minecraft or hopping into like Fortnite, something he can just do and then get out of it, whatever the case is. But I think a lot of that is like you're saying with social media and other gaming aspects, especially as we get older, my generation, and then people of younger age that are used to playing more games like Call of Duty, hop in, hop out games, that instant gratification feel, um, they have a hard time wanting to earn that stuff. So I mean, in Final Fantasy 14, yeah, there's cosmetics you can buy on the shop. Most of them are not that great. Everything else, you actually have to go and earn that piece of gear. Sure, if the gear is available in the auction house, you can buy that. But some of those pieces, like in the raid and stuff, like you have to go and to the older raids if you want some of that cool gear from back then and actually do it. And I
Right.
think that yeah, it's just a complete precedence. Like I said, that brings us back to can't always blame the developers. We have to also take some of the blame
Hmm.
as players who have changed in our thought process and the way we play games. Of if we're satisfied with getting everything up front instantly and now 30 minutes later and you're done, that's all they're gonna work on. What was again, why develop something for thousands of hours when the players don't care and they'll do the same amount and spend the same amount of money for even less?
So, just to kind of go back to my original question, because I feel like I have my own answer, and then I'll say my answer. You can give yours.
Yeah, of course.
To improve the genre as a whole, really can't be done overnight, and it can't be done over a couple of years either. What I feel like needs to happen is companies mimic what other companies are doing when it comes to success. So naturally, Final Fantasy I think does a lot of things right. There's no direct pay to win. There's no Final Fantasy token to buy. And frankly, I've never been an opponent of cosmetics. Like the cosmetics you buy in Final Fantasy aren't raid cosmetics. Now, there are a bunch of mounts that you can buy that are really cool. But honestly, there are cooler mounts, in my opinion, in game that's earnable. So, I understand. I think that's something that Steven wants to do as well. Like he wants to put stuff in the auction house or in the auction house in the like the cash shop. But he wants to save all the cool stuff for in-game achievable stuff. And I know with the Ride MMO coming out, we don't know the kind of model it's going to be, if it's going to be free to play, a subscription, which I think it might be subscription based, but people could make the argument that it could also be free to play because that's pretty much their model for a lot of their other games. But let's just say it's subscription based. If they don't have a Riot token, they have like modest cosmetics and mounts to purchase and nothing else, no pay to win, no severe pay to convenience. And you have everybody now playing the Riot MMO, Ashes of Creation, and Final Fantasy 14, and then you have suffering MMOs like New World, SWTOR, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, ESO, and basically what it's going to force those AAA studios to conform with their model because that's where all the people are. That's where the success is. The success now lies with microtransactions and pay to win and just all these other bullshit that players will put up with, but they don't like it. And they end up quitting because it doesn't feel good in the long term. So I'm really curious to see like what your take is on that.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, I do agree with you on the overall, for it to really change, it would take a lot. And you're right. It does. You are trying to force people to conform to a certain way. I mean, we can look at that as far as say like Steam and Epic, right?
Right.
So Epic started pushing out there, really trying to get ahead and get more people on Steam by offering better percentages back on their games and so forth, offering a lot of free stuff and trying that way.
Right.
Unfortunately, they lack some of the features that Steam excels in, far as the forums, community, being able to write up,
A review
reviews
and
on the game, yeah, stuff like
right.
that. So if Riot was to do it, and the thing about Riot though is because they have League of Legends and they have Valorant, so they got a lot of the CS:GO people that never played League of Legends. They have all of their League of Legends players that is a what how many millions and millions of players that are playing League of Legends right now? I don't even know the number anymore.
The last time I checked, and this was literally a couple of weeks ago, 115 million a month
Okay, so
worldwide.
let's just say 20 million of them, not even
Right?
50%. Let's just say 20 million of them decided to log in day one on their new MMO,
They'll have the
and
biggest
let's
MMO
just
on the market just
yeah,
day one.
overnight. And let's just say out of 20 million, they have a 1% that turn around and stay back. They'd still have a huge, huge market. 1 million players
Huge.
turn and just stay over. It's massive. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And I think that to their benefit, and they're counting on that a lot. And if they do stick to their free to play and just have a like their typical huge cosmetic shop,
Mhm.
I mean, the only thing they're lacking right now is we really just don't know anything about it. Um, yeah, you could really push other AAA developers to doing it because if you look at previous ones, you had EA that was buying up all the smaller companies that, like BioWare. BioWare is a company we used to trust. Like when I heard BioWare, like I was like, oof, I want to know what this game is going to be.
Right.
Not so much anymore.
Well, Blizzard
It's
also used to have that same
exactly.
appeal too.
Yeah. I mean, and then we saw
Oh
Diablo,
my
and you're
god.
just like, "Man, really? We're really doing this?" Then there's Todd Howard in Elder Scrolls.
Mhm.
But, I mean, it would take something like that to really pressure the rest of them. And for microtransactions, I do think that they could be changed, far as loot boxes go, I think it's bullshit. They shouldn't be a percentage. It shouldn't be gambling.
No.
If you have to be 21 years old to walk into the casino, why is that not the same for someone who's gambling their money away on loot crates. It's the same. It really is. I mean, you're gambling your money away, hoping you're going to get something in return. And this aspect is even worse because it's not even monetary value that you get to actually return to keep and put in your pocket if you do win. It's just a digital item that if tomorrow they decide to wipe your account, well, it's probably gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, when we've had those companies continue to do their practices the way that they have been, and again, we have accepted it for so long and we've just been going with the flow of it because everyone's like, well, this is how it is. I want to play it. So I guess I'm just going to go with it and do it. Then, well, they're not going to change. But if
Right.
we had somebody like Intrepid with the Ashes community as big as it has grown, if this has a successful launch along with Riot Games and say they had a successful launch and they actually stick to their core values and they don't do the sneaky cash grabs of any type of if they kept it purely cosmetics at a flat rate of something upfront that's not cheesy, that would be one step in the right direction. Personally, if there was no cosmetics and it was all earnable and only earnable in game, that would be awesome.
Right.
Do we think that's going to happen? Probably not. Um, and I understand. I mean, one thing on for Intrepid, if they do a subscription based model, which they are, uh, that brings me down less on wanting the cosmetics like in their
Right.
game. If I'm paying this much money a month, like I granted they said most of the stuff should be earnable or some variant of it could be earnable in game.
Mhm.
Okay. I'd still expect that if I go and I do a raid at the end, in game raid, and I walk out and I have this armor set on, I'm gonna be really upset if the guy over there spent $3 and looks better than me. Like
No,
I'm
I
gonna be upset.
no, for sure. And it's one of those things where, they have to kind of do it right. And again, like it's gonna have to we're gonna have to wait to see on what Ashes does with their cosmetics and stuff. But I feel because Steven was in that same position that you were, he's not gonna do that to his players. Like when he
Yeah.
himself got burned in that same way. So it's like he said, it's his baby. Like he really does want to do right by the players. Now, the only other thing, and if I can play devil's advocate here, could you imagine? God, I hate thinking about this, but could you imagine if Riot MMOs comes out with as devious pay to win, like honing stuff as Lost Ark? Like, think about, I mean, I don't want to blow people's minds for a second, but let's say they come out with like, hey, you can actually purchase this alternate token and actually like have a percentage chance to have a higher rate to get better gear. Like,
Wouldn't say I'd be surprised, honestly.
but that's the thing though, because we Ashes is not a juggernaut. Like, let's just be honest here. They are a small
It's
indie
not.
studio. They are definitely performing at a AAA studio quality, which I appreciate, and I believe Steven, I'm glad he's holding that kind of a standard. But I think the Riot MMO is really going to dictate where our future of less pay to win, more pay to win, or even more confusing, like not so clear pay to win. Because that's what Lost Ark is. There was a whole debate before the game even come out. Is it pay to win? Is it not pay to win? Because it was just not clear. And then as time went
Right.
on, we slowly realized, yeah, this is pay to win. Like
Yeah.
clearly freaking pay to win. But it was not clear. And again, with Riot being them, they could do something in that same way. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying in this Earth B scenario, which will be
Yeah.
terrible, that will only reinforce the current AAA standard of, yeah, we were doing everything right because Riot's doing it. You know what I mean? And that's what
Yeah.
I don't want. Like, oh my God, because then we're only going to have Final Fantasy 14 and Ashes of Creation. And every other AAA studio game is a severe pay to convenience or a complete pay to win cash grab. And that's just going to feel so terrible. Like it just is.
It would. It would. I mean, it would be absolutely just it'd be bad for the community as a whole. It'd be bad
It
for the
would.
industry. Um, I mean, and as looking at Riot as a company, it's not like they've done great things either. They've been in so much trouble over the last couple of years for how terrible they've been.
Not, yep.
But as their on their gaming side, I mean, we look at Valorant. To be fair, I don't. I mean, when I looked at Valorant, I was like, okay, so they took Overwatch and mixed it with CS:GO, and to me, I was like, it looked a little low effort. Like I honestly thought Valorant was kind of low effort. I know a lot of people really like it and they play it and stuff, but looking at the game as a whole, I didn't see any. Again, no one reinvented the wheel or anything. There was nothing crazy. You just changed the colors of everything, added some skills into the game instead of just shooting, and now you have Valorant. It's just CS:GO with a different skin. Personally, I mean that has like I said, you have abilities, but that's Overwatch already did that as well, and a few other games of the same sort. But yeah, I mean they really could. They could, depending on how they go with this, whether it's going to be a really schemy pay system or
Oh
they do
god.
free to play and make it cosmetics, which I'm really hoping for,
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm hoping
we
for too.
never man,
Because that's what
we
they've
don't know.
done in a lot of their other games, right? I mean, they've done cosmetics, no pay to win. But again, this is an MMO here. They've never made an
Yeah,
MMO. So they've never, not saying they couldn't have opportunities for pay to win things with their current games, but their current games really don't, not saying incentivize pay to win, but there's no reason to. Like, and again, I'm not I don't know Riot Games' libraries of games of all the things they have. I know they have like a first person shooter, they have like an RPG like style game, but this is, like I said, this could be a whole different monetization, and
yeah.
we just don't know. But I want to get away from this depressing fuel
But yeah,
conversation.
I got you.
But I mean, so let's talk Ashes, right? Let's talk Ashes of
Let's
Creation.
talk ashes.
So what was like the driving force of like you being like on this bandwagon like right now? Because I mean, I think the people that are very excited for Ashes of Creation right now are like a different breed of MMO gamer. Maybe we're just too high on copium. Maybe it's we're I personally feel, and this is just me, that there are gamers out there that want to believe in a company the same way we used to believe in other companies when we were growing up. Like we talked about Activision or Blizzard, right? Like, well, I wouldn't say Activision, but I would say Blizzard for me. Like, I trusted them when they released a game. Like, I played every Blizzard game, even though a lot of the genres didn't even appeal to me. I even played StarCraft, and I'm not a StarCraft person, but I did play it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Um, like, is that sort of like what drew you to Ashes of Creation? Was just maybe Steven's pitch, or was it the features? Like, what was it?
Oh man, it wasn't even like it was in 20 about a year. It's about a year before the Kickstarter went live. I
2016?
remember, yeah, it
Okay.
was about a year before the Kickstarter went live. Um, I remember seeing a video. I don't even know how I came upon it because I'm always looking for different games that are coming up. People are working on stuff, but it was their original video of an MMO being made in Unreal Engine, and I was just like, "Ooh, what is this?" And I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about, but it's where they show the mage. She comes out, she casts up like the frost wall, and then
Oh yeah.
she uses her ability to jump over something or glide or whatever. And it
Right.
was awesome, right? And so from there on, I was just like, I want to know who these people are, and
Right.
I want to see what this is. Because like I said, I've tried just about every MMO out there to try to scratch that itch of finding one that was great. And there have been some really good ones. And I just kept waiting for it, and as they started finally releasing stuff, and then the Kickstarter happened. Well, I saw the Kickstarter and I was like, I want to invest into this. I mean, I there's some other games I backed. Was the probably one of the first 100 people that bat Escape from Tarkov. Um,
Oh my god, I did not even know you were one of the original backers of Ashes of Creation. That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Day one, as soon as it went live, went and got a Kickstarter pack, and then
Wow.
me, I'm one of those people that like, I know it's there, right? But I
Mhm.
try not to get overhyped. We've all been hit too many times. Anthem, looking at you.
Oh my god, dude. I talked
And
just aside real quick, I talked to Baba and I mentioned Anthem and he was on Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
Like, it was just so disappointing, it was so funny.
it
Oh
is,
my god.
man. Biggest disappoint game. God,
Oh,
I
I
was so excited for that one.
it looks so
But,
cool! It looks
it
so
was
cool! Like, it was like Iron Man, and you can fly, and the graphics were
it
really cool, like,
just needed more. That's all they had to do is just keep giving us
God.
more, and they couldn't do it. But, and for Ashes, I mean, so finally, we started after that, we started getting, people on the forums, we started reading, we started seeing more videos, and they were telling us, you know, what what their goals were, and from that, like, I wouldn't say I get overhyped, I just really liked all the systems that they were talking,
Mhm,
and it especially kinda drew me in when like, some of the very first videos of Steven actually talking about it, he spoke about the same games that he used to play, which were some of the same games I used to play. You go back to like the original like Lineage, and you have Arcade and other ones, and what we specifically liked out of those and what we wanted to see. And they really harped on the ideas that made the original MMOs what they really were. The mystery of going and figuring out stuff instead of you got a quest, it literally shows you the little red dot to go and kill these many things or whatever. Like some of the things you actually had to go and figure out. Back then, you actually had to read the quest. It tells you where to go in the quest, but you had to read it. You didn't have a map that automatically pointed you over there, and you had to go and do those.
right.
And that's what I miss. And even now, in the last like several years, because quit playing WoW and stuff, and I'm just excited to have another community like, in Atium. That was my point of actually coming on to Atium was for Ashes as well. And since then, like just seeing everybody's energy with how they want Ashes and the way that Intrepid has produced Ashes so far, it's kept me from being a naysayer. I've been positive on it.
No, right, right, right.
Trust me, I have an account that's larger than my Ashes, and it's a Star Citizens account. So,
Oh my god, did you
oof,
back Star Citizen?
yeah, yeah,
Oh my god. Like,
yeah.
how
I've had.
how deep are you on that game?
I'll send you a number later.
Oh my okay. Stay
Let's
tuned,
just
guys.
say
Stay
I
tuned.
would be in the Phoenix Initiative. All right, I'd be in PI right
Oh,
now.
wow, okay.
So,
Okay. Wow. Well, I
but
mean, but I understand the appeal of Star Citizen. I just feel like the scope creep on that game is what really turned me off to it entirely, and that's what they're not doing it for Ashes of Creation. So
I, I mean, some people had their right to be somewhat reserved about it because,
mhm,
for instance, if you look at the Kickstarter, right?
mhm,
um they were setting so many goals, and it was quite a few different. We're talking about like the underworld was one of those goals, the
mhm.
naval ships was a goal,
Right,
and that was one of those things that we were kind of concerned about. But if I compare the two real quick, if you look at Ashes and what he's talking about, those are mostly environmental things that are pretty easily added in and that you can blend in their own way. I mean, we already have water, open bodies of water in the world of Ashes, so adding naval ships wasn't too far fetched. You just have to, at that point, you're talking about assets and you're talking about doing the physics part of them actually being able to work in the game.
right,
But far as it being a like too far of scope, like creeping out of there, then I don't
right,
think Ashes did too bad versus like in Star Citizen, I mean, because they have a mass world. Like when you get in there, it's massive, right? And you're
right.
talking about fast traveling between places still takes minutes. And their systems, I don't think, I mean, I think we have another 20 years of technology advancement before we can actually do what they're really wanting to do in that game, personally. But
Jesus
I
Christ.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think there's, you have an idea and you have your scope of what you want, and I don't think that we went past that with Ashes. I think they were very reasonable within what they did and what they picked. And so far, from what they're saying and from what they've showed us, they're meeting all those expectations. I mean,
S
we did see some ships. We did see some
You mean the
in the
ship for
weathers
Oh, you mean
in
for
Ashes.
Ashes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
not the ships in Star
I
System.
was
We'll
gonna
go
say
away from Star System.
okay. Well, so, like, what are the what are the things that you find most important when it comes to playing an MMO? I mean, you did mention the stuff about leveling and everything like that, but for you specifically, like, what was it about, like, either the beginnings of your MMO journey or just like what you want Ashes to bring back? Because I feel like there are aspects that are just completely missing from today's MMOs.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of that is I mean, so like World of Warcraft and some other games, you could party up and stay in a party as you leveled. You could all go through your quest, leveling, and stay in the open area. And sometimes, and like Stranglethorn Battle, you kind of needed a party, or you might have get ganked a lot.
Yep. Very true.
And so we're kind of looking at that in Ashes too, and that's what I really like. And I mean, Luke Hale is one of our biggest advocates for definitely wants to be able to play in a party. That's why he wants to play party games,
Right.
and I agree with that. And because some of my favorite times was, you know, cool. I get some story modes, like especially if there's decisions to be made and they may differ from another person's story, then you might need to play those as a single person. I get that,
Right.
but man, what I remember enjoying so much was just like, hey, let's gather up. We're gonna do this dungeon. There was no YouTube, there was no Google, there was no, guides out there back in the original when we had WoW. I mean, there might have been some, but it was gonna take you a while if you're on dial-up like I was. So
Yeah. I used to do
getting
T Hotbot back in the day.
yeah. So like just setting up and actually being able to play with your friends all day, not just for such small portions, but you could get in there and y'all could actually go do something together, have a goal, whatever the case was. Usually as long as you're around the same level or something. But the that's what I really enjoyed. Like finding out, learning new stuff, and trying the new dungeons that were fresh that people didn't have memorized or guides to go do anything like that.
No, right. I think for me, I learned very quickly playing World of Warcraft back in the day, and this was like 2006. Um, I don't think they designed the quest to be soloable. I think that you can, for certain classes, but I remember just being on like my warlock. Like, dude, there were many times where I was like, dude, my void person would die.
Hmm.
Um, Void Walker. Sorry, is that what it's called? Void Walker. Anyway,
So it's been
b-
so long.
yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, like I remember that would die, and I'd be like, shit, gotta run away. You know what I mean? So it's like it incentivized at least you grouping up with at least one other person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I miss that kind of like you need to find a little bit of camaraderie, right? Like this is an MMORPG. You're not meant to play this by yourself. And honestly, a lot of people back in the day did not want to play it by themselves. Like we were going into like team speaks and vents and but this was before Discord, to like group up with our friends in high school or college and play this game with like other people. And I just feel like I don't know if it's societal, but I feel like we've just become so much more antisocial, which has driven more single player experiences within MMOs. And I just don't understand like this. Like you want to be by yourself in a world full of people, but that's how people are in real life, right? Like they'll rather be in their home than go out somewhere. And I'm kind of the same way too. I mean, I can go outside, but I guess I prefer to be in a virtual world surrounded by people that I want to interact with rather than being in real life same
Fair.
situation.
It's cheaper too.
Yeah, definitely a lot cheaper for sure.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And I mean, that's one of the great things, I guess, when found Ashes is, I mean, the community or found Atium. Our community is great. And everyone has the same excitement and focus when it comes to being here with Ashes. And I think the way that they're developing Ashes specifically with like the node system and the mayor system and governments and different, they're really incentivizing grouping together, trying to come to a common goal, knowing though that there's going to be other nodes out there, another, groups of people that may be our enemy and coming after us sooner or later for our node or stuff. But they
Right.
really incentivize the group play. And that's probably one of my favorite things about it right now, outside of just how beautiful the game looks. I mean, the game, no one can deny that. The game looks amazing,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to see the improvements in Alpha 2 versus when we played in Alpha 1.
Right.
Um, But yeah, no, but that's definitely probably my biggest excitement and want out of, Ashes is just that party group, friendship, just being able to play more, with people that you enjoy playing with, and you're not forced to go do solo stuff all day.
Right. And I think the main appeal for me is now that I'm older, I'm 36 years old, I got a family, I got a kid. Um, and when you kind of hear that rundown, you think I need a game that I can play for 2 hours and feel like my time's respected. Um, and I can do so much stuff within 2 hours. I'm the opposite. Maybe I'm the outlier, maybe I'm weird, but I am really looking forward to Ashes because this is a game where a year's time of like me playing maybe like 2 or 3 hours every day uh is gonna take me a lot longer than if I was playing 2 or 3 hours of, let's say, like Lost Ark or New World or World of Warcraft. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you can do everything so quick and so easily in those games. I mean, most of those games you're gonna be able to level to max within a day. Ashes of Creation, you're not going to be able to do that. Like you will literally be hard locked, like at the fastest, and this is you literally like no sleep, just having you and a buddy play the same account. Probably it may take you two weeks, 2.5 weeks to hit max level. And because of how the node system works and how monsters scale with the node development, um you may be at a lull for a period because the server you're on just isn't progressing as fast as you're leveling. So you may be stuck at that level until like the node progresses or the node advances. It could be like that. I'm not saying it is like that because we haven't seen it. Of course, we haven't been in alpha 2, but from what it looks like on paper, that may be the case. So I don't know. I'm just looking for a game that actually has teeth, that actually has longevity into it.
exactly.
Because there isn't many games right now that have that. Like you can probably get maybe a month out of an MMO, and then you're bored until like the next bit of content, and it's just like, how did we get to this point? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I put 800 hours into Lost Ark,
oh, I know, dude. You really went into
and
Lost
I
Ark.
haven't played Lost Ark in about a month and a half,
Months,
maybe
yeah.
2 months. So, yeah, it was a lot of hours in that time, and I still couldn't hit the item level that some of those guys were, because they people were paying swiping for it. But, that's something else, and what comes back to Ashes of what I was talking about earlier, people wanting that instant gratification. Then you got people like me and you are like, "I don't want that." Like, I want
Yeah.
it to feel rewarding. I want it to take time. I don't want to like sure, I want to if I can sit here and play for 8 hours a day, great.
Right.
But I also don't want to burn through it in that time period either. Like I still would like the I don't know. It's just earning something and feeling that reward at the end is so much better instead of just getting that, oh, well, it took you like 2 days to hit max level. No, give me a few weeks. No, give me a month.
Right.
That'd be fun. Like and at the same time, one of the things that Steven said is, as far as like daily stuff, I don't want to feel like I will miss something or that I'm going to be left behind if I don't log in every day.
Right.
You know, and that's one of those things too. Like, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to be able to play way more than we can, and they're gonna outlevel us, that's fine. But it's not a that's different versus like, okay, well, if you don't log in, then you're just gonna be completely behind everybody else, you know?
Right. Kudaja, I'm pretty sure I'm safe to say you've played Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like
Yeah.
the whole okay.
Tabletop, yeah.
Yeah.
Pen and paper, everything.
I feel more people need to play Dungeons and Dragons because if you were to ask any seasoned dungeon master, "Hey, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons before. Can we play like a quick 30-minute game real quick?" Like you'd probably get laughed at. Like
I
there's
mean 30 minutes like today and then
yeah,
over like
yeah,
every day
and
for
then
the next like year.
exact. No, I'm talking a whole campaign. Let's do a whole
Yeah.
campaign in 30 minutes. Like what? Like, and I think that's like what I did in high school. Like I did Dungeons and Dragons. Like I love the long form epicness of that kind of gameplay and going through dungeons and going through towns and just like these decisions your character has to make and you're playing with other people and those decisions also matter. Like it's just such an experience, and I feel like a lot of people have never experienced that, and they are very their view on MMO gaming is very distorted because of that. Like they feel like they want this, like we're talking about, like instant gratificationness of like, oh, I'm just gonna do a couple of quests and I'm gonna log out. Like, but that's fine, and there can be quests that are like that. But I think MMOs have always been to inspire the grand journey. You're in a huge world you've never been in. Like, you can't just take that in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things you probably can do in 30 minutes, but it's not going to be like quick and easy and now it's over. Like, it's probably going to be like multi steps. Like you said, well, we can play 30 minutes right now, but then we're going to play like, like for a couple, like 2 more weeks, for 30 minutes, like every day. And I think that's what I would love people to kind of understand about where Steven's coming from and where a lot of players are also coming from. And I just feel like we have this, I don't know if it's a majority, a minority, or what it is, but I feel like the people that are constantly wanting things quick and wanting things like, well, I'm a dad and I want to be able to play for 2 hours and it feel meaningful. It's like, well, yeah, you can play for 2 hours and it be meaningful, but you're not probably going to complete the meaningful task you're probably wanting to do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that's the kind of, at least for me, that's the kind of mentality I would like people to start getting into a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes I mean, that also just don't get me everyone's selfish. Everybody has selfish needs. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. There's gonna be a time where you're like, I just want me to do me. Like, that's it, right?
Right.
And I get that, people are like, "Oh, I just don't have the time." I'm like, "Well, I mean, you gotta understand that the majority do. Like, the majority of the people that are gonna play this game are gonna
Make the time.
fit, in that certain, like, time span of time that's going to take to complete task and everything else, and that's what developers and stuff are going to push towards, the majority. I mean,
Right.
and they should. I don't you no one person, no one can just cater to any one person. You're
Right.
going to cater to the mass. um but there are, like you said, there's definitely ways to make it feel meaningful even when you have less time. Like, even if you can't do everything you wanted to be able to do in a certain day, say if you have, like you said, just a couple hours, you should still be able to find something or feel some, like, self-fulfillment, like, in that process, even in those 2 hours, and be happy with it, with what you got. Or even have that feeling of, "Man, I really wanna go back and play a few more hours later tonight," or something. And that's what I hope that they stick with, not meaningless tasks that you can just complete over and over again. I just don't think it's worth.
Right. And just kind of going over some of the systems, right? Because I think Ashes is doing some craziness when it comes to certain the systems. So, like, out of the major features of Ashes of Creation, like, what to you probably stands out like the most enticing for you specifically? I know most people probably will say the node system, but I've heard people say professions, caravans,
Mm,
naval.
I yeah. So me, I probably work either on the well, I mean, it depends though, because some of the systems are tied to node systems, right? So,
For sure.
like, to me, I'm just like, "Ooh, bounty hunting sounds great," but unless it's a military
Yeah, military
node,
node.
like, and then you have to go and get the quest and stuff to do that. Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious about some of the crafting systems, but I'll be honest, like, I've never been a big crafter. I've only done it when it's like, well,
Me
if you
neither.
don't do it, yeah, if you don't do it, then you won't get this gear, or you won't be proficient in this, or it's the only way to make money. I mean, I do it that way, like, that's it. But if gathering systems are fine. It's one of those things that, like, I'm okay with those because it's usually something that you just do as you're leveling. It's a passive kind of thing that you can turn around to sell all your mats, right? Or give them to the guild so that you can help craft yourself stuff.
Right.
So far, though, for like the systems that really intrigue me, like, I mean, the node system is great, and it's like to see how things grow, and again, that's putting your effort into something, especially as like a community effort into something,
Right.
and watch it really grow. So that's awesome. Um, Man, other than that, my favorite thing so far that we just really don't fully know is going to be the class system. The class
Oh
system
man,
is what
yeah.
really stands out to me. And because, like I said, I mean, the last time we've seen a class system that this is possibly this intricate of subclasses going on with your main class of all the other different classes available, right? Like, there's not
Mhm.
many games that have done anything even close to this,
Right, and you
especially MMOs.
well, I'm gonna say a hot take, okay? And
Oh,
I've been debating to make it this into one of my videos. I think the 64 class system, as it currently stands, is not feasible. It's not doable in a way that players are expecting. Let me be
I
clear on
agree.
that. I think it's going to be very disappointing if they stay true to the system. It's gonna be very disappointing to many people once they look under the hood. And also, I don't think it's expandable. Like I think if we look at expansions, right, we go like way into the future here. You add one new base class. We go from 64 classes to what is it? It's not 72. It's like higher than that, isn't it not? It would be like 90 because if it goes 8 and then
Was it
8,
8 times 8? So it's 9
yeah.
times 9?
Yeah, so isn't it it'll go from 64 to 81
Yeah.
class combinations by adding one base class. Like
Yeah.
it's not expandable. And again, I think they just would have been better served if they wanted to make like a summoner a necromancer is to have a more elaborate talent system, like a talent tree that gives you more necromancery spells, right? And you're still a summoner, but by choosing these talent points, now we're going more into a necro-y kind of build. I just feel like with how it currently stands, like I don't know if it's going to be appeasing to people. Like,
I
don't you
think it's gonna
agree?
be more cosmetic.
Oh, and that's what I don't want. Like every time when I try to go into it, I'm like, because I think about necromancer, I think is what catches a lot of people. But I also look
Yeah.
at a Templar because I love Retribution Paladin in World of Warcraft. Like I don't want it to feel like I'm playing a fighter still, or I think it's a cleric. It's a cleric fighter for Templar. I don't want it to feel like I'm still playing a healer with just different whooshing spell animations or different colors with the same abilities. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that's not going to feel good to me. Um,
S So let me ask you this question then
sure.
on, because I don't know off the top of my head. Have they stated if there was gonna be DLCs in the future or expansions?
Yes. Like, and I
So they
think
will be.
so. Steven said, and I think he meant patches because he was like, "Yeah, we're thinking about doing like 3 to 4 expansions a year," and I'm like, and I'm
Mm,
thinking in WoW terms. I'm like, "There's no way." But
yeah,
I think he means like major patch releases
yeah,
because you, of course, you think of like a patch in World of Warcraft. It usually has a name, right? Like Siege of Orgrimmar is the patch, which you can classify that as like a mini expansion, right? Because it's just a whole new different thing, but yeah, I think they are going to add major patches, of course. He called them expansions, but I really think they're patches. But it makes sense that eventually we get a new class, and I just don't see it with how it currently stands it being feasible. Similar to maybe how the map rework happened. They looked at the map they had, they were probably playing it internally and realized this actually doesn't work. Like,
yeah.
we need a
Not for their node system, yeah.
right, and so they needed to redesign. I think the same thing might happen with the 64 class system.
I
I don't
think it
know.
really there's if they have to have it in alpha 2. Like, you have to be able to get into your
No, I agree.
subclasses and stuff in alpha 2
I
and
agree.
be able to test that, because, I mean, if not, like, if they are not at the level to where they have subclasses available for the main classes during alpha 2, we're screwed. At that point in time, you're like, it definitely can't be more than, like, some small stuff.
Right.
And my thing is, okay, say they do a subclass, right? Say they do pull it off and they go with the 64 different classes that they have right now.
Right.
And there's subclasses that the different names, but you're more looking at a title. And what if it's only changes to not all abilities, but maybe one ability or two abilities, like their
Mhm.
main ability, or for instance, he's mentioned like instead of a leap before you go invisible, or before you go invisible now you teleport before you go invisible, something like that, right?
Right.
Well, what if that's it? What if that's the only thing? What if it's more of just a mobility skills only, or
Right.
certain skills that would, that are more identifiable to that type of class, I would say.
Right. I mean, and it's totally possible. I mean, I just fear that what players are expecting from 64 class combination
Yeah,
is not really going to be the reality once we're in there. And I think players are going to be disappointed. And I think honestly, if they just scrapped it and said, "Hey, we're making 15 classes and, we're going to do our best to balance them and add like this is a tank, this is a healer, these are DPS." I mean, that's what's again, Steven says we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Well, you kind of are with your class system. There hasn't really
yeah.
been a game that's done this. So you are reinventing the wheel when it comes to this specific system. I just think that going tried and true and just making it a class and giving a talent system, like just make a necromancer class, give a necromancer talent tree, give necromancer abilities. You know what I mean? And just jigger it better, and it'll be more easy to add classes in the future. You know what I mean? And then we can have a class that's not called tank. It'd be great.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see it far as that. And like I said, I mean, there is the possibility. Like I've seen certain games that did it. You know, we have like Guild Wars One, like I mentioned, there was definitely your main class and your subclass really changed how you played. You kind of got skills from both. Rift to me would be another one that had a pretty good difference in classes. For instance, one of the only games I know that has a tank rogue. I mean, and that's one of the classes in there. It's like you're literally it's a you could pick in between a few of your different subclasses and really change how like you could be a tank rogue and that thing was a monster in PvP because you did a lot of burst DPS damage and almost took none. That's fantastic.
Jesus.
But I'm really curious to see because I mean at the end of the day, even if they do it, like the biggest concern is balance, right?
Right. Well, and
Like
and that's the other thing too. How the balancing of 64 class combinations seems way harder than 15. You know what I'm trying
yeah,
to say? Like it's and you don't even have because like, they don't have to even go the World of Warcraft route, right? Like they can just give you one huge talent tree for the Necromancer. Now, let me just preface this real quick. Necromancer, 15 classes. It's just one class. It's not an augment. To get rid of all that out of your head for a second. They have a huge talent tree where there's different variations of being a necromancer. You can go really heavily into lifesteal. You go really heavily into demons and ghouls and goblins and whatever pet stuff, and then you can go really heavily into like another facet like dots. So it's like similar to World of Warcraft specializations, but your tree will dictate where it kind of emalgs into, kind of like the old WoW talent tree, because you can spec into different specs and put points into different specs at the same time. So similar to something like that, I think that is way more doable and way easier to balance than whatever their current system is.
yeah. And I mean, I get the system what they want to go with is like really opening up the player customized ability, like
Right.
everyone it really allows people to go more in depth in the role play. And I mean, obviously the RP community might not be as big as the rest of the MMO community, but there's definitely a community for it. And I think if you do it right, it's very inviting. And even if people aren't into RPing necessarily, they do like the individuality, right? Everyone
Right.
wants to be their own individual, no matter how like. And I think that speaks to certain MMOs. I mean, like, if you've played BDO, you've seen the character customization.
Oh
It's
yes.
insane.
Yeah.
The amount of sliders and like it's literally insane, and it does allow you like know your class is set to a certain one, but your character looks it can be anything that you want it to be just about. I mean, if you want to be a mongoloid, you very can well be. You can do anything. You can look like an old Nordic person on there. You can be I mean anything.
You can be Giga Chad if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do super jawline anything you want on there. A clown too. You can literally paint your face. It's terrible. Um but yeah, so and I think I mean a lot of that goes into the people being their own individuals and allowing them to do that in a video game is how you keep people playing a video game. Like it really does matter because I mean, I'm playing Warframe and Fashion Frame is the end game. Like so it's fashion is the end game a lot of times. But I think with the classes being able to do it this way if they do pull it off, it's going to really, really like take time for people to be very specific on the characters and grow them the way they want to. I can tell you,
Right.
I'm going to be trying every rogue and fighter mix during the alpha 2 that there possibly is. I'm about to have a lot of level 20 characters.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So to kind of like wrap up a conversation, it's kind of hard to
Yeah.
believe that we've already been talking for an hour and 5 minutes because
Uh,
it feels like 20. But that's usually how it goes. Like me and Baba is the same thing. Like we were talking, I'm like, holy crap, time just flies. But anyway, to kind of wrap up, I guess our Ashes talk. I believe we can probably be here for another 2 or 3 hours.
easily.
Um, what do you feel like Ashes needs to do to really capture the player base?
To really capture the player base, they need to be able to. So, like, are you referring to player base as after the game launches or before the game in order to get more people into Ashes?
I'm thinking like the MMO player base. So this is like before the launch. This is like to
Okay.
really, you know,
So far we've seen bits and pieces and we're all happy with it, but we've never seen all of it together,
right,
right? So I think the biggest thing that they could do is after Alpha 2 and Beta, and they really smooth things out, show I mean, it can be a literally a 15-second video of start to finish of your character customizing of, from when it starts, you picking your class, how your class just a small subtle change. It can be even cosmetic almost of the change of between what they were playing and just so they can but they want to see the character in the world, they want to see the gameplay, and they want to see how the world evolved. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be super deep, but they want to know what they're getting into. And
right,
if you can show them your core things that are different from every other game out there, as far as like our class system, our node system, the weather system, those things, they look amazing, period, in the game already. And if they're able to properly show those, I really think they'll grab a lot more players because the things that we're cited about, other players aren't really sure, they haven't seen it. A lot of it, the MMO like genre, a lot of people out there aren't fully aware of Ashes yet. And I'm telling you, it's again, it's gonna come back to that. Cool, I can play this character. They can look like this. I can do this job, and if I do this, that node has a potential chance to look like what I want it to look like. That's where it's gonna come to.
S-
Knowing that whatever they do in the game, growing in the game, can change the outcome of the game.
right. It's very surprising you didn't even mention combat because I thought you were going to go down a rabbit hole of like, well, if combat is good, then the whole player base is going to be at knocking on
I mean,
Ash's door.
that's part of the characterizing though. That's part of the character. So yeah, I mean that will show the changes, and that's part of what I mean. Like they somewhere or another they have to be able to show that your character does change based on your subclasses or the different classes. Like they got to show that, of course, because people are that's going to be the first question. They could show the entire game if there was no combat. People, are like, what about the combat? Like you
Right.
got to get it all in there somewhere.
No, for sure, for
So,
sure.
but I definitely think that overall, especially the people that have been playing MMOs. I mean, look at Asmongold and his community. Like they're still going to play WoW, and they freaking hate it. So give them something that they know that they can grow in,
Right.
and the environment will grow with them.
Right.
You're going to take those players, 100%.
No, I completely agree. You give them content to seek their teeth into, and the investment feels worthwhile. The thing of why people don't stick around to MMOs is because your investment of your time is not worth it. It just isn't.
Like
It's
I said,
just
800 hours, and I didn't feel like I did shit. So
yeah. And Lost Ark is a good game. Like
it is. Oh, I loved it.
If the Gary system was just better and not predatory, it actually is a great game. The raids look amazing. The class design, the combat for what it is as a isometric game, it's
Hmm.
awesome. The
Oh no,
sounds,
it's
it's
beautiful.
visceral.
It
It's
plays well. The combat, everything's great about it.
ah,
It's just trying to go through the end game. I don't want to dump in thousands of dollars to
Yeah.
be there. So that's the only issue. I mean, I got to experience the original first in-game content, but it's still, I mean, the game's amazing. All the characters, the classes and stuff were great, but yeah, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same, and that's like I said, where it comes back to feeling that whatever you put in, you're getting a return,
Right.
and it doesn't matter. I mean, because it could be somebody who's PvPing all day. It could be somebody who's just farming, like chopping logs down all day, or somebody that's questing all day. No matter who you are and you're doing one of those things in the node, you're progressing that node in a way that's progressing from you
Right.
as an individual. And I mean, and that statement's true. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, it does matter because even if, I mean, if you're an elf and that person's an orc or whatever the case is, and if you're doing it at least, and there's other elves, you may not even realize that y'all are pushing it in a certain direction.
Right.
Like you're pushing the node in a certain direction that's going to take favor after your characters. And to me, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can speak for both of us that we're really excited for Alpha 2, whenever that may be, which is probably going to be in January or maybe February of next year. I don't know. We'll
I'm
see.
calling I'm calling second quarter next year.
Oh, you're calling second quarter? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm basically calling for sure, which this is probably another video that I've been working on, is why December's live stream will announce Alpha 2's release date. Like, I am 1000% confident that on that monthly live stream, they will announce the release date for Alpha 2. Like 100%.
No.
But
Well, you never know.
they could
They
announce it
may
earlier.
call they may wait till April Fools and get us all.
Oh my god. Could you only imagine? Jesus Christ.
Uh,
I wouldn't
everyone's
put
gonna
it
be like, where do I return this package?
I wouldn't put it past Steven. Oh my
Oh
god. Well,
man.
Kudaja, thank you so much, man, for having this conversation with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, man. It's been great.
Awesome, man. Well, where can people find you? Do you have a Twitter? Do you want me to link something, or you want me just to say, hey, go join Axim if you want to have a conversation with Kudaja?
Yeah, pretty much you can find me on, I mean, Discord, Steam. I do have a Twitter that I harass Spain on.
Oh yes. It's very important.
It's at Kudaja Gaming.
Okay. I'll make sure to
So
link
you
that in
can
the
reach me on there. Yeah,
I'll put it
I'll
in the
link it down there.
description.
And but yeah, no, you can always find me in Axiom Discord. Or if you see Kudaja literally in any video game, it's me.
Yeah. Very unique name. Very unique
Yeah,
name.
it is me. So I've been on the leaderboards a few times and hopefully I'll stay there.
Nice, man. All right, guys. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the 1v1 podcast. Kudaja, like I said, he's honestly such a plethora of knowledge. I mean, Axiom in general, we just have conversations almost every day about Ashes of Creation. So even if you're not interested in joining the guild, like just join the Discord and just pop in and have a conversation with us. And we're always like, if you want to talk Ashes of Creation and you see me or Baba Yaga or like Kudaja, like we're probably talking Ashes, like believe it or not. So, but thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys in the next one. Like I said, I am your host, Vlhadus. This is Kudaja, and we'll see you guys in the next one.